Welcome back to the channel. My name's Dan and this is TechDriven. This is our weekly news show we put out every Sunday, and we're going to do a recap of what happened in the tech industry over the last week. On this show today, we're going to be talking about AMD's supposed new laptop CPUs that got leaked, as well as their RX6000 graphics cards. There's been a lot of leaks this week, so I tried to wrap them all up right before the big launch and the official unveil of everything that's going on with those on the 28th. As well as I have some RTX 3070 information, as well as Intel, PayPal, and some new water cooling bits that got launched this week. Stick around. So earlier this week, AMD had a document that got leaked out onto the internet. This document pertained a guideline for retailers and e-tailers on how to combat scalpers and purchasing bots for their new upcoming, highly anticipated Zen 3 CPUs, and also their new RDNA graphics cards, or Big Navi. So this document is it's a simple one-pager reaching out to all of their partners and retailers that sell their products, talking about ways they could mitigate bots from purchasing the cards and people buying extreme amount of quantities to then resell on eBay for a profit or 3-4 times the profit of or cost of what the card would be MSRP. The reason why AMD is doing this is because we saw this happen with the Ampere launch with the RTX 3080 and 3090 video cards, where people bought those cards, there wasn't any limits on them, there was already very low stock. A lot of people complained about them going out of stock instantly and never got notifications of them going in stock, and then they all popped up on eBay for a huge cost. So what AMD is trying to do is they're gearing their e-tailers and retailers ahead of time of the launch, and I wouldn't doubt they're already trying to do things to anticipate for this launch. So some of the things they said, hey guys, you guys should put some real-time bot detection mechanisms in, as well as some gotcha implementations, purchase limits on customers. So, only let customers buy one item. So you're only allowed to buy one CPU and one graphics card. You can't buy any more than that per transaction, as well as limiting purchases at launch. So you cannot go out and buy one, already you're limiting one per cart, but you can't just go back, okay, I bought one, okay, now go back and go buy again. If they see the same transaction from a user that wants to buy it multiple times with different purchase orders, they will cancel those other purchase orders because of the limited availability, apparently. And they want to make sure as many people get this in their hands as possible. As well as they want to do some kind of virtual queues and reservations, and also manual order processing. So they want to ask the retailers to vet the orders that these people are who they say they are, and it actually is going to real consumers and not being purchased through a bot that is already given all the purchase information, and it's just flooding their server, hammering it, trying to check out with as many cards as possible, and as well as cart inventory. So if you're at one of these new CPUs or graphics cards to your cart, it will expire if you leave it in there for too long and dump out of the cart. That way, letting other people get the item if you are on the fence. So I myself am pretty excited about the new CPUs, and I may or may not upgrade initially right away, depending on availability. And the same with the graphics cards. I'm curious to see how the reviews are gonna be. And my biggest thing is I wanna wait for reviews before even purchasing one. And then I will show you guys my thoughts on them after spending my hard-earned money on it. So this week, Intel announced they are letting go and selling their entire NAND flash business. So all the storage, memory, anything that deals with flash, gonzo. They are selling it to the Korean giant SK Hynix. They are a massive chip manufacturer, and Intel is selling them the entirety of their business, intellectual property, foundries, and also all the employees go with it, for $9 billion. That's a massive deal. And this is a big deal for SK Hynix. This will actually improve their stake in the memory game, giving them tons of new products and also all the IP and employees with it. So they'll be able to further continue to develop it and improve and make the products that were Intel better. This deal is supposed to take place over the next period of 5 years. So SK Hynix will be paying out $7 billion for the first 5 years. And when the deal is closed, then they'll pay out the last bit, is what is told. So it'll be very interesting. But this also means Intel is not just stopping right now. They are still obligated to continue to develop and produce the products for the next 4 years. And at that point then, SK Hynix should have pretty much taken over production and development of the products. So PayPal, a very popular way of purchasing things online securely. So with PayPal, you get buyer protection. So if someone tries to scam you and you purchased it on, like, say, eBay or on an e-tailer, you'll be able to actually get your money back. And I've dealt with that personally, where I've had issues and contacted PayPal, and they were on my side, and they did a charge back to my credit card, which was really good. So PayPal has always been fantastic, but now PayPal has announced they are stepping into the cryptocurrency business. So in 2021, you're going to be able to buy, sell, and shop using PayPal and cryptocurrencies, and they're going to use some of the most popular ones right now. So Ethereum, Bitcoin are the two main ones that they've announced. So we'll see if they support more, and hopefully they support Dogecoin. So for this week in new products, we have 2 new products that came out, and they both happen to be water cooling products that I've found that were quite interesting. Thermaltake is no one new to water cooling. Some may actually be surprised that Thermaltake does make water cooling components, but they've actually been making custom loop stuff up until the early 2000s, if not earlier. So Thermaltake has actually came out with a new water block that looks very much like an AIO pump and water block combo, where it has the circular design, it has the Thermaltake logo on the base, and then as well as on the top, it has the 2 inlet and outlet, and then it has the Thermaltake logos, but it has a mirror finish. But once you turn on the RGB LEDs, you have the LEDs through that will shine through that one-way mirrored glass. So it's actually pretty cool looking water block. Some of the main notes to talk about are it's copper plate, nickel plated as well, so that'll protect the copper. So there's nothing wrong with a raw copper water block, but copper will degrade over time, it'll oxidize, so the nickel plating will help it last longer. As well as compatible sockets it works with is AM4, LGA1200, LGA1150X, and as well as LGA2066. So now this won't support TR4 or TR4X, which is the Threadripper stuff. This will mainly support your mainstream CPU sockets. So our next water cooling product that came out, and I know a lot of RTX owners will be very excited, is Alphacool announced their RTX FE water blocks. So they have a few different variants of it, so they vary in price by about $10, starting from 126 euros to 136 euros. But the main notes about this water block is it's a copper base plate, it's nickel plated, acrylic, and also has digital addressable RGBs. But one of the, all those features, very normal for water blocks. My EK water block for my GTX 1080 Ti has all those things except for non-addressable RGB, because it's a little older, and addressable RGB came out just a little bit after this water block came out. But one of the cool things that this water block comes with that mine didn't is a included backplate. So you don't have to purchase an extra backplate that usually costs you anywhere between $50 to like $80 sometimes. So that's actually really nice. And the price of these water blocks isn't too bad. Now 136 euros, when you translate that to Canadian dollars, it gets up there, but it's still, I'd say that's well priced considering for the cost of the GPU. I've had a lot of experience with Alphacool products, and they're generally very well made. So I would say, good job, guys. Would love to get one if I had the card. So early this week, the AMD Ryzen 5000 mobile CPUs got leaked online, showing a bunch of SKUs, so varying from Ryzen 3 to Ryzen 7, as well as some of these SKUs are actually Zen 2 based. So there's different variants. All the high-end versions of the new 5000 chips will be Zen 3 based, but anything lower than the highest end SKU looks to be Zen 2 based. So that's very interesting, and I wonder how that's going to play out for performance for AMD going forward. But going with Zen 2 base might actually bring the cost down, and those will probably be slotted into more inexpensive laptops. But today I want to focus on the Zen 3 base chips and some of the important specs. So there's 3 chips I want to talk about. So there's the Ryzen 3 5400U. As a Ryzen 3 chip, it's got 4 cores, 8 threads. The base clock is at 2.6 gigahertz. It boosts up to 4. It has a TDP of anywhere between 10 to 25 watts. It has a basic IGP integrated graphics in it, and that graphics card features a 6 CU that also runs at 1.6 gigahertz, so it has 6 compute units, and it has an 8 meg layer 3 cache. So it's a pretty decent CPU for your mainstream user that's going to just watch YouTube, Netflix, do some word processing, maybe a little bit of Excel, and maybe some light games, but nothing major. Now, if you want something that's a little bit stronger, you can step up to the Ryzen 5. So the Ryzen 5, there's the Ryzen 5 5600U. So what does this get you? Well, just like a desktop chip, it gets you 6 cores, 12 threads, and a base core clock of 2.3 gigahertz and a boost clock of 4.2 gigahertz. Now the graphics card gets bumped up a little bit to 7 compute units at 1.8 gigahertz. It gets a little bit more cache at 12 megabytes of layer 3 cache, but the same TDP of 10 to 25 watts. So very interesting how that is possible. Now let's go up to the biggest chip, the Ryzen 7. So this would be, featured in your higher end laptops, gaming laptops, and would have the most performance. So this should be the top tier chip, being a Ryzen 7 5800U, being 8 cores, 16 threads, 2 gigahertz base core clock, and then boost all the way to 4.4. So this is really nice, as you can have those 8 threads or 8 cores, 16 threads, clock all the way down and really save you a lot of power when you're not really using it. But then when you really need it, they'll just crank right up. So that's awesome. As well as the graphics card, again, gets an extra bump. So now it's at 8 CUs at 2 gigahertz. So as you go up in the line, they get an extra compute unit and then more clock speed. 16 megs of layer 3 cache and the same TDP. So I find the TDP thing kind of odd, because how can you have a 4-core chip and an 8-core chip have the same TDP? So it's very interesting. There must be some ways that AMD's really playing with the power on these chips in Zen 3 for the laptops. But if it's anything like the consoles don't really use that much power, and they're integrated they got graphics and CPU all on one die. So really interesting. Looking forward to an official launch. So now we're going to talk about some leak benchmarks on AMD's desktop CPUs. First things first, we're going to start with the Ryzen 5 5600X. So the Ryzen 5 5600X, like every other Ryzen 5 CPU, is 6 cores, 12 threads. But the interesting thing about this CPU is, with the current leak that happened, is in using the SI software benchmark that was shown off, it actually scores better in single-threaded application and multi-threaded testing versus the Intel i5 10600K. So what is the performance difference? Well, in single-threaded, it's 13.9%. So basically 14% improvement, which that's really good. But when it comes to multi-threading, and this is where AMD always shines, is 36.5%. So that is quite an uplift. But Ryzen 5 is fantastic, great for the bang for the buck, but you probably want to hear about top tier performance. So top tier performance, the 5900X. It had Geekbench marks leaked, and in the single-threaded Geekbench, it ran 1605, and in the multi-thread benchmark, it ran 12869. So that was really good. But you know what's even more impressive? It almost hit 5 gigahertz while doing that. 4.95 gigahertz it was clocked at. So that's really impressive. But hey, there's still one more CPU higher end than the 5900X. Yeah, the full-on Zen 3 chip, the 5950X, and that also ran a Geekbench score and bested the 5900X in both scores. So a single core test, or single thread test, I should say, is a 1661 score, and then did a multi-core score of 15804. So that was pretty impressive. But if you're not really familiar with Geekbench, what does that put you in numbers range, let's say, versus an Intel 10900K? Well, single-threaded Intel 10900K is 1412. And, well, we don't even need to talk about multi-threaded. So big Navi, RDNA 2, RX6000 series of Radeon graphics cards. It's been a long time coming. Now, today is definitely heavily filled with rumors and leaks and, you know, alleged information that could be true or not, but some of this information seems plausible. So let's talk about the RX6000 series, or Big Navi. I've been pretty excited about this personally, because I want to see Nvidia have proper competition again. We saw it in the CPU space, and look what it's done. It's completely changed how the CPU game is. Intel dropped their prices on some of their parts, and then they added more cores, added hyperthreading to chips that never had it to compete with AMD. So now we need AMD with their Radeon team to compete against Nvidia's GeForce graphics cards once again on the top tier, because so far Nvidia's just been fighting themselves, which is fine because they've still been innovating even though they've had no real competition on the high end. So RX6000 series, what do we got? So it looks like I have found information on all the names in the family of the graphics cards. So every single card that will be in the family initially. So we'll have a 6900 XT, nice, a 6800 XT, and a 6800 non-XT. And then the interesting thing about these three video cards is they'll be running on the Navi 21 die. So what does that mean? Well, the Navi 21 die is the powerhouse of RDNA. There is a smaller die that two cards will run on, which is Navi 22. And that will be the 6700 XT and the 6700 non-XT. Now, I suspect that these two cards will be the replacement for the 5700 XT and the 5700 non-XT. And those are fantastic cards. So I'm hoping these get a bit of a bump in performance, add some ray tracing support, and you'll be laughing. I think that'll be a good $500, $400 Canadian video card. I think they're a bit cheaper in the States because our dollar sucks right now. But let's talk about the specs of the 6900 XT and the 6800 XT. So the 6900 XT is expected to be the full-blown fat Navi chip. So this will have 80 compute units. It will have 5,120 stream processors, 16 gigs of GDDR6 memory. Now, unlike RTX 3080, 3090 that has GDDR6, AMD has opted out for that, and they just went for regular GDDR6. The core clock is the most notable thing. It's gonna boost, actually the core clock is gonna run over 2 gigahertz, 2.3 to be exact. So that'll be really interesting if all these specs are true. And the other thing that I should add too is it'll only have a TDP of 320 watts. So that's gonna be quite a powerful card if this is all true. So this should put it in line, based on these specs, 3080 firing territory. So what about a 6800 XT? Well, the 6800 XT is gonna be a cut down chip, 72 compute units, 4608 stream processors, same 16 gigs of RAM, and a slightly slower clock speed at 2.25. Very marginal. The biggest difference in performance will be the cut down compute units and the cut down stream processors versus the core clock. And this probably will come in at a lower price, this video card. So what I find interesting is if these are actually true, that'll be pretty awesome. And it's nice to see the XT naming really sticking around. That really harks back to the early 2000s of when AMD used the XT naming in their graphics cards. I maybe would like to see, a 6900 XTX and maybe boost that compute units up to 100, which would be interesting to see. Now, there was also some benchmarks leaked online the day I started filming this, which was quite interesting. So Igor's lab and also some guy on Twitter And I actually can't say what his name is because it's not written in English. But Igor's Lab had, and they're both 3D Mark bench scores, but the Igor's Lab one I find is more interesting because it has Port Royal. So on Igor's Lab, all the charts show based on percentage, not on score. So the RX6800XT is what they're reporting as the Navi 21 chip versus Ampere versus Turing. So the Ampere card is a 3080 FE and the Turing card is a 2080 Ti FE. So the way all the charts work is the 6800 XT, the Navi 21 chip, is 100%. So every other card's compared based on that 100%. So in Firestrike Extreme on 4K, the 3080 FE is behind the 6800 XT by 19%. So that's pretty impressive. And then the 2080 Ti FE is behind it by almost 40%, 37% behind. That's a big performance increase. In Time Spy Extreme 4K, it's a little bit of a different story. The performance gap narrows huge. So the 3080 FE really catches up and closes the door of only like 3%, behind the 6800 XT. The 2080 Ti FE actually does bring in that gap a little bit better, and it's behind about 15%. It's 84.2% of the performance. So it's not bad. So if you had a 2080 Ti or still have a 2080 Ti, it's still a good card. It's not complete garbage yet. But the story really changes when it comes to Port Royal 4K gaming, or 4K ray tracing benchmark, I should say. Well, the 6800 XT definitely isn't the winner anymore, where the 3080 FE takes the performance crown at 120%. So it's 122%, sorry. It's 22% faster than the 6800 XT. And the 2080 Ti FE is only behind by about 4%. So in non-ray trace titles, it looks like the 6800 XT is going to be a powerhouse. But in ray trace titles, it looks like you're looking at about the same performance as a 2080 Ti, which wasn't horrible, but the 3080 is just that much better. So going on to the next set of benchmarks that we have, the story kind of changes, but also does depict the same story. In Firestrike Ultra and Extreme, the story stays the same as what Igor's Lab had, where the Navi 21 chip 80 CU unit, so that could be the 6900 XT, if that is the name, or a 6800 XT. But in both scores, it beats out a 3090, a 3080, and a 2080 Ti. Now in Firestrike Ultra, it's pretty much tied, a very narrow win over the 3090, but in Firestrike Extreme, it's got a good lead over the 3090. Now, the story changes when we go to Time Spy on these second set of benchmarks. Time Spy Extreme, it's in third place behind a 3080 and just a little bit above a 2080 Ti. The story stays the same in Time Spy Normal, where it's narrowly beaten out by a 3080, but has a good lead on a 2080 Ti. So that's the one thing that about these leaked benchmarks is it's hard to believe all of them. But it's a good way to kind of gauge on what it's going to be. We're not too far away from the official launch of the cards anyways. So October 28th at I think noon Eastern, that's when the stream goes live for them, showing off all the specs of the new big Navi cards and the RX6000 series cards. So I'm looking forward to it, and I really think these are kind of true because based on what AMD showed off at the Zen 3 premiere, at the end of their stream, they showed off 3 benchmarks with the with whatever big Navi chip, because they didn't specify exactly what it was, but on the 3 titles that they showed at max settings at 4K, and based on what other sites were saying at the time, they were saying, hey, this FPS is about the same, if not maybe a little bit better than a RTX 3080. So if AMD has actually finally nailed it and they have a 3080 competitor, that is going to be amazing, because really a 3090, it's not that much faster than the 3080, and the price is astronomically way more for very little gain. It's more of a Titan. So this will be interesting to see in a couple days time if these numbers are actually true. So we're going to switch gears to Nvidia now. So Nvidia's highly anticipated 3070 video card is just about to around the corner to come out. So Nvidia delayed the launch date, didn't really specify why. It could have been supply, could have been ways to mitigate the scalpers. You know, I'm not really sure, but it looks like there's some leaked benchmarks that came out of Geekbench, and it actually performs better than a 2080 Ti. Just like what Jensen said when they first launched it. He's like, expect 2080 Ti performance, if not a little bit better. So the leaked Geekbench benchmark shows that the 3080 Ti performs, give or take, a little bit better than a 2080 Ti, I should say. So it performs, it did at the top end 359,000 points, and on the low end 359,000 points. Now, how does that look against a 2080 Ti? A 2080 Ti on the high end did 355,000 points, and on the low end 345,000 points. So they kind of overlap each other, and it could be just driver maturity with the 3070. So the 3070 probably driver maturity is going to get better. So that'll be pretty interesting. Again, these are leaked benchmarks, so you don't know if they're 100%, but it'll be interesting to see if they actually come to fruition. Other things that's going on with Nvidia is their supposed RTX 3080 20GB model and the RTX 3070 16GB model have been axed. So they are no longer. They were rumored that they could come out, and there was some decent proof showing that they were actually a thing, but it looks like now they have been kiboshed completely. So it could be maybe due to the lack of them being able to make enough graphics cards currently to meet demand, and they said, okay, no, we can't add any more variants of the models. We just need to simplify and focus on what we have, and maybe they'll come out with them at a later date. So we'll see what happens, but right now at this point, it looks like if you were hoping for higher VRM models of these cards, looks like you ran out of luck. So moving on and continuing our talk about the 3070 cards, because the 3070 is going to be a well-priced card and a well-performer, as we know, before even really getting our hands on one. But I want to show you guys some of the partner cards that have been shown off. So some of the popular partners that are here are readily available here in North America, and some of these cards are more available in other places in the world. So one of the brands, Indode 3D, I've never really heard of them, but they're probably popular overseas. With their iChill 4 or X4 card. So this is a really interesting looking card. I'm not crazy about it, but it's like very lit up, it looks like in the pictures, but I'm a little worried about the shroud might actually covering too much of the heatsink. But it's a pretty neat looking card. And again, like all these cards will probably game around the same. The biggest thing you want to look for is price, thermal, support, warranty versus other cards. So you always want to look at multiple reviews and see how these cards perform. EVGA has two models they're going to come out with, the FTW3 Ultra, which has a giant RGB strip on it, but it has a beefy triple axle heatsink and fan array, as well as they have the XC3, which is a little more basic, a little more toned down, a lot less RGB, and it's a really nice looking card as well. There's the Gainward Phoenix, and they have a couple different cards, and it actually has a flow-through design through the backplate. There's a Gainward Phoenix GS as well. Colorful is coming out with 3 different cards, which they have some fun names: the Ultra, the Advanced, and the Battle Axe. So the Ultra has this very much kind of trendy color scheme right now, the purple and blue, and then the Advanced has like, it's all metal looking, and then with like a red center fan, and all these are triple axle fans, and the Battle Axe is red and black because gaming. And they're pretty cool looking cards, and apparently they're factory overclocked, which is nice. And moving on to Gigabyte. Gigabyte's doing a triple axle as well, but Gigabyte's card has 6 monitor outputs, which will be really nice. So if you are doing you want to have like a big monitor display, you could do that easily with the Gigabyte card. So I've actually had my hands on a Vega 56 from Gigabyte that had 6 monitor outputs, and I used that to connect it to 6 4K TVs to make a network operations center. So I do like the way Gigabyte does these versions of their cards with a lot of outputs. As well as there's an MSI gaming trio. So it looks very similar to their other gaming trios for the 3080s. It's a very clean, simple card. It's not too gaudy as some of their older cards were in the past. And Asus also has 3 versions as well. So very similar to what they have for the 3080, 3090. So you have the Strix, the Tough, and the Dual, which has just dual fans. It's a very basic cooler, and that'll probably be the cheapest one out of the bunch. So it's pretty neat. This is kind of gives you an insight of what cards to expect and what they're gonna look like. So I'm pretty excited for them. Will I buy one? Probably not. I'm gonna hold out for the RDNA 2 to see how that compares to the 3080. All right, thank you for watching. This has been another news tech update kind of video. I don't know, have an official name for it, but this is our weekly tech news video. But thank you for watching. If you've stuck around this long, I know this week's episode was fairly long. Some quick side notes and some housekeeping. Thank you to everyone that watched. Just as of now, and I'm actually editing this video right now, the last video from last week hit almost 600 views. We're really, really close. I can't believe it even got that far, so that blows my mind. And thank you to everyone that watched, and thank you so much to everyone that commented, and I tried to respond to everyone my best of my ability. And you know, I like basically every comment that came in, so thank you again. Really hoping we can get the tech-driven ball rolling once again, and make up for the lost time for the last 8 years. We have not been on the air, or on YouTube, I should say. Yeah, so today you probably noticed some different things. So I fixed a lot of the lighting issues. I fixed the sound quality issue. Well, improved, I should say. It's never perfect, but improved a lot of the lighting. So the 2 LED lights to the left and the right of me. Now I put paper in front of them to help diffuse the light a bit more. I added 2 5000K daylight bulbs in here that are equivalent to a 100-watt incandescent, so that really helped, as well as that lamp back here. It's a soft white bulb, but I also have a bright white for it too, but this setup seems to work, as well as I played a lot with the settings in the Canon T3i to fix the over contrasting I was having. So it's working out pretty good, and the new microphone with the zoom on my the new external microphone attached to my Zoom H1 seems to be working quite well. Now, funny fact is, if you go on our Facebook page, you would have saw me post up late last night and late on Friday night saying I have filmed the episode twice and I'm still having audio issues. The first time the Zoom was not plugged in all the way. It didn't click 100%, so it was recording based off of the Zoom's mic and not this one. So the sound was very much of last week's episode. And then the second time around, I left the actual Zoom mic on my laptop that is directly in front of me now. I'm using for show notes and also controlling the camera. That gave a ton of feedback. So this is the third time filming the show. The current time is 2:22 a.m. on a Friday night. So yeah, I'm a little dead, been tired, but I really wanted to get the episode filmed, get the first edit done, and then tomorrow, Saturday, I plan on getting all the images and everything put in, start building the title and everything for YouTube, and this should be, when you guys are watching it, it'll be live 9 a.m. Sunday is my goal. So that's my goal for every week, is to have the episode live. I'm hoping going forward in the future episodes, it'll be faster for me to shoot this and edit it as I get back into the groove of things. So anyways, thank you again for watching. Thank you again for commenting, and we will see you in the next one.